Hello, and welcome to today's course. We'll be taking a look at some of the guidelines and best practices to structured classroom facilitation. Take note that both the outline of this presentation, as well as some of the tips shared in the main content section, both serve as some great benchmarks to improve your skills. We've all seen this in the presentations that we've witnessed. There's always an agenda slide. Why? Why do we have an agenda slide? Well, the agenda slide gives an overview of the topics and structures, such as the sections. We could be covering a variety of topics, the different times when breaks will be allotted, and a passive notification to the class participants of a test at the end. It also gives the facilitator a guide to help prepare for the class, while at the same time giving the class a roadmap and eases the uncertainty of what's next. Learning objectives. These are very important when you have a pointed direction that your course is taking. Your learning objectives should include action words such as identify, integrate, describe. Think of it like this. How do we want the information we are sharing to be used in action? How will it benefit our audience in their daily lives? Without coming off as too authoritative and potentially harming your rapport with your class, an effective method of delivering this slide is to review the points and simply say, "We will do our best to respect your time. Please return the courtesy." One great way to drive engagement is to create an activity or exercise that'll get folks involved. In this example, it's up to the class to guess the top 10 tips we will be reviewing. At the end of the presentation, you can take stock of who got the most right. This is also an effective way if you break them up into small groups to work together to establish this list. So just take this out, start a 5-minute timer, list as many tips or best practices for live classroom facilitation as you can think of, and then at the end, have the class begin to score their sheet against the next 10 slides. So let's take a look at some of those top 10 facilitator tips. First off, it's important to know your material. Each of your slides has a purpose. Know what that purpose is and tell that story. This will greatly reduce your reliance on your slide notes. It will also increase your eye contact and engagement with your audience and decrease the daydreaming and disengaged participants. Take time prior to the class to review the material, even if you think you know it. Write out slide notes or script your presentation. Understand your learning objective and facilitate to that end. And always prepare a checklist for any materials, equipment, tools that will be needed. And regardless of how often you've facilitated this subject, check your checklist. If we'll take a little bit of time in clearing the brush, we can probably prevent a few fires. Your class will only take the curriculum as seriously as you do. So show up early and start on time. Keep your promises made in the agenda slide and the timings, especially for those breaks. For many, this one item can make or break your engagement and your invitation to return. So how does punctuality affect a person's perception of value? In some cases, a minute late and a minute too soon isn't on time. On time is on time. No matter the task, dressing for the occasion is always important. It may not always be a suit and tie, but should be appropriate to the task at hand. For anyone who presents to people as part of the job or wants to influence the behavior of others, the way we dress does matter. So let's not kid ourselves. First, people judge us, at least in part, on how we dress. Second, what we wear affects how we feel about ourselves. This is a concept known as enclothed cognition. When we're getting ready to perform a task, a good deal of work starts with putting ourselves in the right frame of mind. For instance, when I suit up to give a talk, it reminds me that I'm there to perform an important function. My audience has invested their time and maybe some money to see me, and I need to show up both physically and mentally to respect their investment. A well-dressed presenter matches their expectations and at the same time adds to their own confidence. Both things help me to perform better as a speaker. By contrast, if I was taking on a task such as cutting firewood, I would likely dress for the occasion. My audience will be throwing wood chips, bar and chain oil, and at times a few sparks. A good set of work clothes will put me in the right frame of mind and more readily prepare me to complete the task. Establishing rapport is always an important key element to getting engagement from any class. Having a rapport then becomes a foundational item. It makes it easier to talk to them and prevents issues from developing into complaints, objections, or problems. Let's take a look at another effective way of accomplishing this. Simply place a slide that has a set of bullet points, a few questions that you would like them to answer, or a few items you'd like them to tell about themselves. And if your time allots and the classroom size allots, go around the room and give each individual the opportunity to speak up and answer the questions. We versus me. Audience engagement. Remember that telling isn't selling. Some information is downloadable, meaning it begs to be lectured or told. But the best information is the stuff you discover on your own. You'll be surprised at how much your audience already knows if you ask. Even if your rapport was lacking, by getting your audience engaged in the material and bought in to the subject matter, you can overcome even the toughest of critics. Getting real-time feedback from your audience can help direct you as a facilitator as to the knowledge retention and learning capabilities of your audience. What's the general experience range of the people that we teach? Well, it could be very broad. This means we need to remain flexible enough in our teaching style to give every participant the opportunity to take something away from our course. Why do we use PowerPoints? And why do the PowerPoints have slide notes? How can we get our audiences physically involved in interacting with the content? Well, above and beyond just telling someone what's on a slide, use things like demonstrations, exercises, games, quizzes, and give them the opportunity to realize information that you intended to tell them. Mixing it up and offering different methods of transferring information really improves the quality of a class. Explain this image. What is it that you see? What are the purpose of the three anchors at the top of the image? The use of analogies, information reviews, imagery, or stories is a highly effective way to transfer a message and relate your point to something the audience may be more familiar with. It will help to anchor the information in terms they can more readily recall when the information is needed. A simple method of this is a periodic pause and a question review, or an example of the principle being used while explaining the principle. Without an anchor, your class may freefall into the abyss of information overload. On the one hand, short interval reviews of key concepts or information can be very effective in reinforcing your message. On the other hand, positive feedback in and of itself is a very effective method. Using a 4-to-1 ratio where possible, some of these examples might be, hey, nice job. You are absolutely correct. Well done. Give me more. Lead someone down your path of logic. Behavior goes where reinforcement flows. And always remember, manage the process, but lead the people. What's wrong with this picture? One of my favorite quotes from the movie The Great Outdoors is, "Let go of the rope, Dad." Don't be afraid to leave your safe space at the front of the classroom and move around. What might you discover on your tour? How can these things affect your class? Here's a little secret. We don't always get to choose our environment for our presentation setup. Sometimes the podium or the screen placement is less than desirable. It's easier to see your slide deck from the other end of the room without constantly turning around or staring at the screen, which gives the appearance that you don't know your content. So don't be afraid to let go of the rope. Step away from that podium and move around the room. Your perception and delivery of the information will impact your audience's perception and use of the information. Your passion, interest, emphasis, voice inflection, and even body language all become elements of the lesson. Remember this, excitement and boredom are equally contagious. Now is our opportunity to review and reflect. So that little exercise we started our class out with, write down the number of tips that you think might be involved in this presentation. Now we have an opportunity to actually test them out. Go around the room. How many of those top 10 did you circle on your list? Did you have any other items? Allow the class to feed back, and you might actually find some material sitting right there in your class. Key takeaways: review your learning objectives. The key takeaways should be part of your learning objectives, as that was the pointed end to the course. What are your aha moments? What elements will you be implementing in your classes? And now we have the test out. There are many different methods to utilize this test out. It could just be a few questions in a group session where we answer the questions in class. There's also some great online resources, some apps. And if you're in this course in one of my curriculums, you'll have an opportunity to utilize one of these. We'll see you next time.